Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Devices and the Internet of Things, which will discuss the recent results of the Devices Benchmark. I'm Allison Crawford, and I'll be hosting today's session. While the Internet of Things, or IoT, has existed for many years, long before it was named and hyped, it is experiencing hypergrowth and will remain a major market segment or a collection of market segments. There is a wealth of opportunities and an intimidating number of choices, and the competition in the market is intense. In the next 45 minutes, Analyst Jack Narcotta and Executive Analyst Ezra Gottheil will walk you through this market shift and how this will affect your business. Before Jack and Ezra get started, I'd like to cover some housekeeping items. First, we're recording today's session and posting it on our YouTube site, TBRI channel. We encourage you to visit our channel to watch this presentation or any of the others that we've posted. Second, we'd like to hear your opinions and thoughts on the materials we're presenting. Please send any questions or comments to the Q&A or chat function. Jack and Ezra will address them at the end of the presentation. Or if you'd like to set up a client inquiry for more detailed private discussion, please reach out to any one of us at the end of the webinar to set up that conversation. Third, we'll send out the slides to everyone registered for today's webcast within 24 hours of the conclusion of the webinar. You can also find the slides, as well as other thought leadership pieces, webinar decks, and commentaries on SlideShare at www.slideshare.net/TBR_market_insight, and we'll share all the social media links again at the end of the presentation. Now let me introduce Jack Narcotta and Ezra Gottheil. Jack has more than 15 years in the IT industry, which ranges from the early days of Ethernet and telecommunications to the current revolution in mobile technology. As an analyst in TBR's computing practice, Jack is primarily responsible for reporting on hardware vendors such as Motorola, Nokia, Samsung, and Sony, as well as focusing on trends and opportunities in the Chrome, Android, and iOS ecosystems. Ezra leads our coverage of HP hardware, Lenovo, and Apple, and is the principal researcher on projects including consumer and business tablets, PC warranties, PC supply chains, mobile device strategies, mobile device management, app stores, and social networking. He's been covering the computing industry for over 20 years, and his insight has proven invaluable to our hardware clients. And with that, let me hand this over to Ezra.
Thank you, Allison. When we look at the Internet of Things, we look at it not as a market, not as a segment, but a capability that cuts across the entire information technology industry and beyond. It affects every single vendor segment. It affects every single product and service segment, and it affects every single market segment. In marketing IoT applications, every application stands alone. It isn't a market. People don't go out and say, I need some IoT, who should I buy it from, or what kind should I get? You need to sell a particular application on its value, on its benefit, to the appropriate market. And it includes broad market applications, things that are sold to industry, to the general public, that are products, including services, et cetera. And it includes businesses that are not considered to be in information technology, that put the Internet of Things capabilities into their devices and products. So that includes industrial products, shop floor products, appliances, home appliances and business appliances, instruments, medical, technical, and consumer electronics products. When instrumented for the Internet of Things, when they're connected, when their data is consolidated, they become part of this industry. It includes also custom applications built for individual corporate customers. And it includes new trendy categories like smart thermostats and smart barbecue monitors and things like that. Most of the innovations, because this is such a broad collection of separate applications, will come from startups. That's where the big new changes come in any kind of cross-market industry. But some companies will come up with some new things, and some of those new things will be winners. So how should we think about the Internet of Things? We've had a bunch of major changes in the information technology industry over the years, and they're often described as a tidal wave that just washes over everything, something like cloud, a rocket launch like smartphones or tablets, an avalanche that just kind of overwhelms things, or a roller coaster that goes up and down and then back up for a while and down and so on and so forth. We think that the best metaphor for the Internet of Things is climate change. Now, unlike these other things and unlike climate change itself, we think the Internet of Things is a positive trend for most of those in the industry and for most end users and for companies outside the industry. So I have a happy polar pair there. I understand that climate change is not a happy thing. So why do I call it climate change? Because like climate change, it's been a long time coming. And like climate change, it's accelerating. And like climate change, it's going to change everything. Why do I say it's been a long time coming? Well, connecting up devices other than endpoint devices through a network and through the Internet has been around for quite a long time. It's been in industrial equipment where factory mechanisms are instrumented. It's been broadly used in medical, where monitoring devices are typically connected via Internet or via Ethernet and the Internet. Data centers have had monitoring devices, sensors in them for many years. HP has been promoting this as one of the benefits of their technology for at least 10 years that I can think. There's been home automation innovation since the early days of the PC. And today, many printers, both business and consumer, have Internet addresses and are reporting not only back into the local network, but sometimes back to the home office. And finally, and this is questionably part of the Internet of Things because we've basically said things like network gear are already there, so that's not new. But home network gear is typically available over the Internet, and it has an interface and it gathers data. And it's an area where the Internet of Things has been a pioneer. So in the past, when you built an Internet of Things application, you basically built a silo. You addressed your market. It was marketed alone, not connected to other things that also were Internet of Things things. It included the device itself, the network that connected the device to the Internet, the database where the data from the device was gathered, and the apps that were used to take advantage and leverage the data that was collected. One by one, these things were built up and sold, and some of them were pretty effective. And we've seen some happening recently, the Nest thermostat, the Fitbit, things like that. They're also going on in industrial and medical settings. What's going on? Why now? Why are we changing over from a bunch of standalone applications to something different? Well, as in most things that happen in the technology industry, we notice a pattern. After we've built the same sort of thing several times in a row, we say, oh, this is a category. What can we do in common to support these kinds of things? We've seen the pattern of building devices that connect through a network to a database and have applications and say, hey, wait a minute, maybe there's a way to leverage this pattern and consolidate some things. We also have much more widely available connectivity. We've been improving wireless connectivity pretty much continuously for well more than 10 years. We've improved the protocols and the instruments, and now we're coming up with a new Internet addressing scheme that will enable us to have many more independent unique Internet addresses, which will help in a world of literally millions, if not billions, of IP devices. The smartphone, which was one of those rocket ships, which has become ubiquitous in recent years, acts as a kind of hub or switch for any devices that are near it. A device can communicate with a smartphone by Bluetooth or low-energy Bluetooth or some other protocol, and the smartphone can take care of the connection to the big network. The components have come along a good deal, and that in part they contributed to improved connectivity, but in general, for lots of reasons, for mobile devices, just the general competition in making things lighter, more energy efficient, longer lasting batteries, etc., a lot of the components that go into these things have gotten both better and cheaper, which makes the devices better and cheaper. The cloud has become a ubiquitous storage facility for things that we want to access from multiple places, or things that we want to transfer. And Internet of Things generate a lot of data, and the cloud is the obvious place to store that. And finally, there's simply the constant quest for something new. The vendors want something new. They want to build market share, gain revenue, gain profit. And the customers, the commercial and consumer customers, are looking for new things that can either give them value, or give them pleasure, or give them profit, or give them customers. So as we see the last frontier, the mobile devices, the smartphones and tablets, kind of stabilize and mature, everybody's casting around for what's the next big thing, and that actually drives some of the innovation. So what is happening at this point? For some companies, this is a land grab. Basically, companies that are providing things that will cut across Internet of Things applications. They want to be the first. They want to be dominant. They want to be the standard. So the components vendors are in there saying, use our processor, use our radios, use our batteries, use our storage devices. Use these as you build these billions of devices. Then companies are forming consortia to come up with standards for things that should be standardized, because you need standards to knit all this stuff together to gain the advantage of scale, and there being many common applications with some things in common. So Google and Samsung are together on a competitor for Bluetooth Low Energy, and other groups are getting together for other ways of standardizing the transmission of information. We expect to see some standardization around data formats for certain categories of applications, and some of those are already starting. So let's look at the data integration. Two of the companies we can mention, Apple and Google, have basically said, pour all your data from this large category of things into our application. And thereby you can leverage getting your data from multiple things. Apple has its Home Kit and Health Kit, and Google has its Google Fitness. And those are intended to give you common places, both store and process and leverage data from multiple devices. Then there's the middleware, the thing that regulates the movement of data from the devices into the databases. And the big player here is Microsoft, that came to the IoT, the Internet of Things, at about the same time that Azure was getting some real traction. So it provides services for Azure that were specifically for the Internet of Things, and it has gained a real opportunity in that market. And finally, databases. There aren't any new databases coming out for the Internet of Things, but most of the databases were already instrumenting for a faster and larger and wider flow of data into them. And the Internet of Things can certainly deliver data in vast quantities. And all the major database vendors are here, as well as the IaaS and PaaS vendors. They're looking for places to put the data that are gathered from these billions of devices. But for the other companies, what's going on is companies are strategizing. They're looking for ways to figure out how to position themselves, their companies, in the Internet of Things, what the opportunities are there, what the threats are there, where they should be, where they should invest, where they should choose not to invest. And they're building their expertise. They're coming to understand what can be done, what's going to happen first, where the prime markets are, when the standards and dominant vendors are going to establish themselves. And they're just learning. And finally, it's important at this point that these companies establish a reputation of being savvy, of being knowledgeable, of having the expertise to actually deliver to their customers what they need with respect to the Internet of Things. Basically, I've divided the world into two types of vendors. The land grabbers must move. Those are the companies in the middle. They're building things that will serve multiple apps, multiple markets, multiple vendors. These are the components vendors. the platforms vendors, so that's all the operating systems people, and the middleware vendors. Everybody else is in less of a hurry. It is not a land grab for them. They need to be prepared. They need to be savvy. They have to be current with the market. They have to answer the questions and requests from their customers, but there's not a terrible urgency here. They have to stay informed. It turns out that most of what is going to be required by Internet of Things applications is things that most of our vendors are already working on, because the Internet of Things, as I said, is not a new market. It's a capability. It's additive to the capabilities that companies already have, and it's synergistic with capabilities that companies already have. An Internet of Things application must have security. It must be manageable. The data must be manageable. It must be able to put data in the cloud and draw it from the cloud. The enormous amount of data require analysis. So analytics are an important capability. And quite a lot of these applications will go to individual lines of business, so the company must be able to talk to the potential customers in the lines of business. Now, the thing here is that when you're talking about having these capabilities of being able to deliver what the customer needs, we're no longer talking about the need to be a first mover. The top companies, the land grab companies, have to be first movers. Even in that case, there are opportunities to catch up. But if your competitor comes up with an application that you can say, here, we have one now, or we'll have one soon, that not only matches it, but it completely leverages all our other benefits, you can catch up. My favorite example of this is in the consumer market, a notoriously volatile market, where the Nest thermostat came out and made a considerable amount of market share. Well, it turns out that connecting a thermostat to the Internet is not a major challenge, and all the major thermostat vendors have connected devices. And Honeywell has an enormous part of the thermostat market. It has the channels, and it has the relationships with the customers. I don't know whether they're beating Nest, but I would imagine they probably are. Being a little late in that game didn't hurt Honeywell all that much. Yes, they certainly lost a few customers to Nest, but if the customer is comfortable with dealing with Honeywell and Honeywell provides the capabilities, then that's adequate. So we're talking about a transition from the silos of the past to a bunch of common resources that are used to develop individual applications. So what are the differences between the past and the future with the Internet of Things? In the past, each application required a market. The application had to address a market and serve the market and communicate with the market in order to be sold. In the future, same thing. These are standalone applications. They must have their own individual value propositions. People aren't shopping for something from the Internet of Things. They're shopping for a benefit. The application is what provides a benefit. In the past, because each of these things was a complete and standalone silo, the applications were the product that was being sold. It was instrumentation for your assembly line, or medical monitoring, or a thermostat. Now, yes, you can sell applications still, and they're cheaper to make because they're common resources. But you can also sell parts of solutions as well. You can sell integrating solutions. You can sell analysis solutions. You can sell components that are shared, or individual components that attach themselves to the application. In the past, in order to make one of these applications, you either had to build it or at least integrate it out of parts that were in the market but weren't designed to be generic and across a category. Now there are many standard or in-place pieces, reduces the cost and increases the synergies excuse me, when you build and sell one of these things. In the past, IoT was specialized. It was not IoT companies, but there were companies with fitness trackers, companies with thermostats, companies with shop floor instrumentation. Now IoT is ubiquitous. Basically, most companies will have some kind of view into IoT and some kind of way of either presenting an IoT product or service or leveraging one. In the past, it was an option for a vendor. Is that the kind of product or service that we're going to deliver? Now, basically, it's a vendor requirement for almost all kinds of vendors. Basically, if you are a company and not taking advantage of the opportunities offered by these devices, it's a rare company that can do that and get away with it. Given these circumstances that we are in a period of transition, when there's a consolidation in the middle, when standards are emerging but haven't been set, when dominant vendors haven't fully emerged and we don't fully understand who they're going to be, is this a good time for corporate customers to build or buy? And of course the answer is, this is a good time to wait. If you go with a protocol, it doesn't become standard. If you go with a vendor that does not become dominant, there's going to be difficulties going forward in integration. You may have reduced leverage in terms of development of that. It's always good to wait because things just generally get better and cheaper. But now more than any others, as we're kind of sorting this thing out, this is a time to wait. But there can be many, many good reasons to move forward. If you have a great application in mind that you think you can gain an advantage in a market, you have to move forward. You can replace the internal components. You can adopt to the new standards. If you can establish a position in the market early. If you have a way of advancing your company's strategic objectives by an Internet of Things application that can be built today, even though parts of it may have to be replaced later, there's every good reason to go forward. But all other things being equal, this is not the best time to make an investment as things settle out as far as the standards and dominant vendors are. So which vendors should we watch? That's my grandson, by the way. Microsoft is in a very good position in the middleware market. Azure was emerging entirely apart from Internet of Things, in part because it took quite a while to mature and it's now beginning to mature, in part because Active Directory, which will play quite a role in the Internet of Things, LDAP and Active Directory and other LDAP directories will be important to provide security and authentication, was adapted to Azure, and Microsoft was able to leverage the growth of Azure to provide services specifically for the Internet of Things. And this gives them a significant opportunity. They would like to use Azure to drive data into their databases and into their analytics. That's not necessarily going to happen in every case, but it certainly is easier once you've committed to Azure to start looking at other Microsoft products. So Microsoft has found itself in a good position in the emerging Internet of Things. Apple was an early company to see the potential in the Internet of Things. The early smartphone company, early portable device company, looking for ways that it could integrate data from various devices. It itself will build and sell, and devices that third-party companies will build and sell. Apple, of course, is extremely happy to see devices that it didn't build, but which will leverage its devices that can be sold in its stores and give people an excuse to go into its stores so they can buy more Apple products. And Google has done much the same thing. Google is in the game in several places, in more places than Apple. So certainly Google has its data consolidation piece. It's also promoted its watch operating system and its various versions of its operating systems for other kinds of wearable products. But it's also in the back end with enhancements to the Google platform, the Google database, and so on. And it's also invested directly in the devices market with its purchases of Nest and Dropcam. Basically, Google wants to be wherever things are happening. And, oh, by the way, Google now knows when you are sleeping and when you're awake if you have a Nest thermostat, which Can't be bad for a company that's basically mining your data for its profits. Samsung is also a player that's in various places. It's made investments in the home automation space. It has the dominant market share in the smartphone, the hub, the communications hub of portable Internet of Things. It also makes a lot of appliances that are being instrumented for the Internet of Things, and that's everything from air conditioners to refrigerators and so on. But it's also a components vendor, and you can be sure that its components will be used in many Internet of Things products that Samsung doesn't touch anywhere else. And so it wins in a lot of ways. Basically, when the hardware industry grows, Samsung is a happy camper, and the hardware industry is going to grow. Intel is looking for the Internet of Things as a way of recovering from not having moved early and fast on the mobile devices front. And they are looking to, they've been trying to catch up with mobile devices by reducing the power consumption of their devices and the cost of their processors. But the Internet of Things is an opportunity to get a lot more things out there in an area where a standard processor has not yet emerged. Cisco is looking to get onto the communications part of the Internet of Things, to handle the flood of data coming from the devices back into the cloud and into analytics, to be a vendor that has an advantage every time a packet is switched. Broadcom is just one of many component vendors that is playing in the Internet of Things. They've got a nice little kit, a developer kit that they sell for what must be considerably below cost, $20, that includes a little portable device with an array of sensors with which applications can be built. And remember, I was saying that startups will be the source of most of the fresh, new, inventive ideas. So a developer with a Broadcom development kit, they can come up with the idea of some kind of portable device that's new and interesting. We'll get an opportunity to move it forward, and we've now got new and interesting ways of funding the development of those things. And by the way, if you look at Kickstarter, you'll see an insane number of Internet of Things you'd never believe somebody would try to instrument for the Internet. So what are the recommendations here for vendors? First is, unless you're doing one of those land grab things, unless you say, I want to provide standard communications, I want to be the processor, I want to be the database, I want to be the middleware for the Internet of Things, there's time to plan deliberately. You should not ignore the Internet of Things, but there's no tremendous urgency. It's going to be what some people have described as a popcorn market. The overall market's going to grow, but it's going to grow with individual products popping up and expanding. Certainly look at them, but the main thing is to be ready with your core market, with your core capabilities, with your core customers, with a whole company strategy. What is your company doing about the Internet of Things? And frankly, I just came back from Dell World, and the Dell Internet of Things story makes quite a good deal of sense for Dell. We do for the Internet of Things what we do for everything else. We provide manageability, security, storage, and back-end processing. The Internet of Things is to Dell not very different from everything else. They also have, with Intel, opened up a lab for their customers, because they are the ally of their IT customers, to look at the kinds of individual customer applications, to let them experiment. Then you look at an opportunistic strategy. Is there a place where we can leverage our intellectual property, leverage our skills, leverage our relationships with particular verticals? Is there something here that there's white space to be occupied? Experiment. I mean, the thing here is that it's not all or nothing on the Internet of Things. A lot of companies got very burned on the rocket ship ride that was mobile devices. They came out with a mobile device, and they weren't one of the few winners, and their rocket exploded on the launching pad. pad. That's not largely going to happen with the Internet of Things. It's a lot of onesie applications that can be very effective and very strong and make a lot of money, but if they fail, then there are others to be done. And finally, communicate, because the thing is that there's a lot of talk and interest in the Internet of Things, and you can't be left waiting on that. And you need to prepare your market, prepare your partners. And if you have a developer community, make sure that they understand that you are a partner they can use in addressing what is a driving force for expanding our entire industry, and for that matter, expanding the industry beyond industries beyond information technology. A lot of big old-fashioned hardware companies are going to be able to deliver better products because they're connected. So you're going to see this affecting all kinds of companies that are not considered information technology companies. It's obvious in things like aircraft and automobiles that there's an awful lot of information technology in these things that were once just, you know, relatively passive pieces of hardware. So finally, things are going to happen, and it's important to be able to know what's going on and adapt to new situations, reorient and refocus. But again, I want there to be a sense of urgency but not emergency in terms of dealing with the Internet of Things. It's not going to be do it now or be in trouble. It's going to be stay aware and react. And that concludes my prepared discussion. So I'm open now for some questions. Thank you very much.
Great. So we've had a couple questions come through. For those of you who have additional questions, please send them through now. So the first question we have is, how long will most companies wait? What is TBR's growth forecast for sensors, gateway devices, apps, etc.?
Jonathan, we haven't prepared a specific forecast. We'd love to engage with you and identify what exactly you're interested in and what we can what kinds of things we can project. But we don't have any numbers either for the particular categories that you mentioned or for the Internet of Things in general. We do have a market landscape in preparation, and that will include some projections for the overall increment in revenue coming from the Internet of Things. Okay.
Do you want to take that next one on the margin?
Again, that's something we have not yet calculated, and it's going to be hard to define. So we need to dialogue about what do you mean for Internet of Things for the hardware industry.
Okay, so we'll come back to you, Jonathan. The next question is, what's the role of operators, Verizon, AT&T, et cetera, in all of this? Opportunities, at least for bandwidth required.
Exactly, and that is the least of the things they can anticipate. That there's more data moving back and forth, more bandwidth is required. As with everything else they do, the cost of transmitting data is going to be part of the cost that potential buyers will calculate when considering purchasing an Internet of Things application. But at the very least, more bandwidth will be required. Right now, it looks like most users are going to go through using their smartphone as a kind of hub. So there will not be additional devices on the network, although if you have remote devices that are not associated with a mobile person, clearly a cellular connection is going to be desirable. So there's those opportunities as well.
Okay. The next question we had is, how will PCs become aware devices for the enterprise?
The role of PCs here is a little bit odd. I'm not sure what you mean by aware. Michael Dell said that PCs are going to be the hub of the Internet of Things, and I don't know exactly what he meant, but I can see a role that PCs play, which is to say they're not really necessary as a major communication hub. However, especially for a consumer, they could very well be a data gathering hub. So we have devices that are capable of generating an enormous amount of data. Data storage costs are lower than they ever were, but they're not zero, and they're more expensive in centralized cloud locations than they are on a PC. So if you are gathering house temperature, air quality information, if you are logging videos of your baby's activity through your baby monitor, you may very well want to be using your local storage if you don't believe this is critical data, and if you're concerned about privacy. Excuse me. There's also the application. So you're gathering all this data, and for it to have value, you have to have applications that access it, that analyze it, that leverage it. And when you have rich sources of data, there is no better tool for manipulating that data than a PC. It has far more both computing power and I/O capacity than a mobile device, and the interface bandwidth through the keyboard and high-resolution pointing device is much greater. So I see it as playing a big role in analyzing the data that are gathered through these devices.
Thanks all for attending, by the way. This is Jack Narcata. I work in tandem with Ezra in our devices practice. And I think this is where the previous question I was asked about what the role of carriers are becomes a very important component of what it is that IoT will become over the next few years. So with the volume of data, not necessarily the different types of data, but the volume of data that's going to be produced, as Ezra mentioned, is really going to require some ability to corral this chaos that could potentially ensue if there's not a platform approach in place to collate, manage, separate, store, analyze the data, what have you. So I think for the particular enterprise applications, it's PC OEMs, devices OEMs, mobile devices, those types of companies working perhaps even more closely than they already do today with either the big three carriers here in the U.S. or in emerging markets, particularly in China with vendors like China Unicom and China Mobile. So there's a kind of a coordinated effort, more or less, that a vendor or a carrier or a combination of the two, that as they adopt that particular strategy, that at this point in the market is likely to have the highest degree of success, as it allows vendors to kind of address the changes that are likely to take place, but also have the back-end infrastructure in place to be able to support whatever new initiatives or whatever customer demands may be on the horizon.
We have another question. What do you see as the major profit pools in Internet of Things?
Well, the ideal gross margin is 100%, and the product category that seems to be able to garner that margin is software. So clearly, winners in database software, in middleware software, in analytics software are the places where the profits will gather. If Intel succeeds in driving processor sales through its Internet of Things, that's another area. And there are other component vendors who get the economies of scale by delivering components across a large number of devices where there's an opportunity here for profit. There's also profit. It's modest but pleasant in the consulting areas, where because there are new opportunities to gain more value, companies are going to need help in figuring out where they can gain advantage through the new potential set of applications.
Okay, with a bunch more questions. The next we have in queue is, what headwinds, macroeconomic factors, technology challenges could slow or limit adoption of Internet of Things?
Well, things are moving along at a pretty good clip. I think the real potential problems, the biggest potential problem would be a massive and public security breach that would cause a major hiccup in the progress. It would be just a hiccup. It would stop things until people were assured of the security of things that were being acquired and from these devices and communicated. The network costs are going to be important, and there may be a certain bounce back effect when people begin to compute the network costs, the storage costs, and the analysis cost, because I think the first tendency will be to gather as much data as possible, which is impossible. I mean, you for any of these devices, you have to choose a reporting interval, choose a resolution, and if you choose a too frequent reporting interval, to a higher resolution, you're going to have the costs of managing and analyzing that data get completely out of hand. So again, I see that as a short-term slowdown until people learn how to leverage these things and use these things.
Okay. Next question we have in queue is, any comments on differences of IoT adoption between developing and developed markets?
Okay, this is new, but let me just say that for the most part, we expect, as in other things, developed markets that have more resources and are looking for market advantages, consumers that have disposable income and looking for more sensation. You expect to see more rapid growth in developed markets, but there may be areas where a developed economy has a particular weakness that can be compensated for. I can't think of any that really quite meets that need, except I'll give you an example of a place. You know, this is certainly a strong economy and a major economy, but still in many cases regarded as a developing economy, although not the part of this is going to affect it. But I've been given to understand that air quality devices, home air filtering devices, are very popular in China and will grow in popularity. Air quality is a real issue, though, there. These devices are being instrumented for obvious reasons. It makes a lot of sense to be able to know what the air quality is in your home, to adjust the processing, and to log the results. That, you know, this is not a developing economy where they're buying air quality devices, but it's an area where it's somewhat different from what we typically think of as mature markets.
The next question we have is, IoT poses a potential security threat in the enterprise. Any thoughts on this?
Well, an IoT device is another device. It's a device that is generating data, it's transmitting that data over the network, and providing appropriate security then becomes part of the entire IoT application. The enterprise isn't going to buy these things until they're well secured. I don't see it as a threat. I think that the security industry tends to sell fear, and it's basically an insurance policy sale. So it seems to have moved on from BYOD to the IoT as the threat du jour, but it is definitely a necessary part of any reasonable application.
Yeah, there's definitely very much a sky is falling mentality when we look at the security market, or at least some of the security trends that are influencing IoT. I think what's important is, and I keep coming back to this because I really think it's a fundamental tenet of what's going to happen, is how enterprises can continue to adopt or vendors for that matter, adopt an approach that more or less encompasses a platform versus specifically targeting either certain security threats or the likelihood of a denial of service attack, or there's merit in a narrow approach to that market, as it allows or will allow companies to establish some first mover advantages. But over the long run, as we've seen with some of the changes in the mobile device industry, particularly smartphones in the workplace, that's still a work in progress. So limiting the scope of what IoT means, either from a hardware, software, or both perspectives, the security question is best answered with a much wider focus rather than a more narrow and potentially constrained view of the trends in the security marketplace.
Okay. Next question we have is, how much of this is about servers versus PCs from a hardware perspective?
I don't think that's really an issue, but it does raise an interesting issue, which is we tend to think of the IoT as everything is gathered out at the edge, all the raw data, all the vast volume, high resolution, individual observations or measurements, and all sent to some centralized store in a server somewhere, either in the enterprise or in the cloud. But these devices are capable of generating so much data that some kind of allocation, some kind of summarization, some kind of design choices will be absolutely necessary. So it's not a one thing or the other. As I said, it is a new set of capabilities that really cut across every single category, both of device and service, in the industry. It's going to affect service. It's going to affect PCs. It's going to affect software. It's going to affect professional services. It's going to affect online services. So if it's personal data for personal use, you'll probably keep it on your PC. If it's corporate data, it will be kept on a server. What might be kept is a summary. What might happen is that you will decide that you want a more sophisticated endpoint device that can filter and summarize according to a program that you send to it. I see a lot of that potentially happening in healthcare. So it's not an either or.
Another question we have is, could a tablet be an alternative hub?
Well, I use the term hub simply to say this is a cellularly connected mobile device that will be with you. So anything else you have with you will probably be using that one cellular connection, particularly given the current way of pricing cellular connections. Certainly anything could be a hub. It just becomes a gathering point. A tablet is a kind of hub that could exist in a Wi-Fi network that has a larger screen to provide a richer user interface, but it probably, to be long-term, would have to be plugged in all the time, because it obviously would run out of power. So it's just a matter of, it's kind of I spoke of the smartphone as really kind of a consolidation point of data, and that's an area where Google and Apple, two major platform vendors, are looking to consolidate and basically store data.
We have a couple more questions in the queue. The next one is, what is the key problem right now that customers most want to solve by IoT in different geography markets?
Oh, that's a big one, and I don't have a quick answer. I would say that the most obvious potential high payoff vertical is healthcare, where there's a potential here of and it's already an area where there's been a great deal of development in the Internet of Things. But there's an opportunity here to provide monitoring data about health conditions, things that reflect on medication compliance. And since it's an enormously expensive segment where cost is always a major concern, it's an area where I think there's going to be a lot of development. Because a lot of dollars are moving back and forth through that segment, there's also a potential here to create some real incentives for utilization of medically based IoT devices.
Okay. Last question we have right now is, what is the next successful IoT device, do you think, after Nest?
Okay, again, I would say it would be something in the healthcare industry. With Nest and with Fitbit, with the consumer IoT things, you basically are hoping that your kind of device will become popular and trendy, whether or not it's really delivering a lot of value. If you deliver a healthcare device, you have enormous institutions that can make a one-time buy decision that will drive literally millions of units. In terms of the consumer space, I think Apple is probably going to dominate the smart watch segment. I don't really think of that either as a segment or as anything having to do with watches. I think it is there a potential here for an interesting, useful device that is carried on the wrist rather than in the pocket? And I think Apple is coming closer to answering that question. Yes, particularly with its market of loyal Apple users with disposable income.
Great. So it looks like there aren't any other questions in queues. Before I wrap this up, as you know, this information came out of our devices benchmark, but I wanted to give the analysts a few minutes to talk about what we're doing for 2015, if there's any thought leadership pieces or any other interesting studies that folks on the phone should know about in terms of what we're going to be working on over the next 3 to 6 months.
Okay, our driving strategy at this point is to broaden our available prepared analysis beyond company-specific and beyond purely quantitative analyses. And we're working on a much broader portfolio. And we're looking at also a breadth of new ways to look at the market that go beyond the established categories. So we'll be looking at the evolution of both the operating system platforms and other kinds of platforms like the productivity platforms that Microsoft and Google provide. We'll be looking at new form factors as well as the classic PC, tablet, and smartphone, and that would include things like the Nest. It include what my boss John Spooner calls the XCast, all the various things that plug into the HDMI ports on television. And it will look at some of the mobile devices. It will look at what's happening with automobile connectivity and things like that. We're also looking at the kind of distribution of data analysis beyond this idea of everything comes back to the cloud. The nature of our industry is kind of a back and forth between centralizing and decentralizing of data and analysis, and we see the next movement being out to the periphery.
Great. So with that, I'm going to start to wrap up. So as you just talked about, if there's folks out there that are working in those industries and you want to brief Ezra on what you're doing, please make sure to reach out to both he and Jack to schedule those conversations. As we mentioned, we're going to be sending out the slides and a link to the recording today. So if you want to look at the slides again or want to re-listen to the recording or send it to colleagues, please do. Generally, I know a lot of folks are interested in having more conversations, so we will be offering up as part of the email. If you'd like to have a 30-minute conversation with Ezra in a private format to ask more specific questions, please do be on the lookout for that. We'll be scheduling those conversations over the next couple of weeks. As I mentioned, I was going to share with you all of the social media links, so I do encourage you to follow both Jack and Ezra. They're some of the most prolific Twitter authors talking about what's happening in the industry. So do check out those Twitter handles as well as the TBR Inc. Handle. Gives you a lot of information in terms of what research we're doing, upcoming events, et cetera, et cetera. And as well, you can join the conversations on SlideShare, YouTube, and LinkedIn to see what we're doing in terms of research agendas and what we'll be doing in the next couple of months. Give us your feedback, all that fun stuff. Again, as you're leaving the webinar, we have that short survey that I love to see the feedback from you guys on. How valuable was the presentation? How good were the presenters? And if there's any other open-ended feedback. We are looking at this feedback. We're incorporating it into our presentations from quarter to quarter. So if you have other things that you'd like us to know about in terms of directions that we should take in the presentation, technologies you want to see us cover, anything that you think that we should know about to make these sessions more valuable to you, please do let us have that feedback, and we'll be incorporating that into the presentations next quarter. As I mentioned, we're going to be doing a lot of thought leadership. Keep your eyes out for infographics around devices and the Internet of Things that we'll be doing over the next couple of months. And as always, if you have questions or there's problems in your business that you want to get some industry expertise from either Jack or Ezra, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We are here to help you guys make the most out of your business performance, so please do take us up on that. So with that, I'm going to start to wrap up. I'm going to leave the chat function open for a couple of minutes in case there's any last-minute questions. And if we don't hear from you now, we look forward to speaking to you guys all again in 2015. A little crazy. So happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and we'll see you guys all in the new year. Thanks very much, and have a great afternoon.